Wachari Nation Building Monday Live. I am Ifashina Efunyemi, your host of this very vibrant discussion every Monday night, speaking about nation building and specifically Wachari Nation Building. We have been consistently discussing our drive to getting our people back to our land, back to our roots, back to what is our primary, most important asset as the Garifuna people. And so tonight we will have members of our board, and we will also have an invited guest because Garifuna land rights is a very important topic. We've been talking about the hubs that we are establishing in various Garifuna communities. We have been talking about our history of land use and occupation. We have been talking about sowing and reaping. And that was the focus of last week's discussion. So it follows quite smoothly and easily that this week we would be discussing along those very lines our drive toward seeking and asserting our land rights as Garinagu here in Belize particularly, and how Wachari Nation building and how Wachari Enterprises as an entity falls into that effort to make sure that Garinagu have a future in terms of land, because what would we do without land? So I'm very glad to have in our line of panelists, Dr. Anna Arzu, who is a very key member. She is our CEO, correct, of Wachari Enterprises. And we have the money man, our treasurer of Wachari Enterprises, Marley Chatier. And I've been hearing some good stuff about you, Marley. I heard about some class that you're doing in relation to Garifuna language and so on. So you know that I'm very much interested in that. But we're going to be talking specifically about land rights, because this was a follow-up to that series of very rich sharing that Barbara Roy had done couple weeks or two ago. We had like back-to-back discussions with him about our use of land. And so we know that currently in Belize, we do have some challenges, in particular Garifuna communities, as it regards to our land. And this is also going to be a challenge, or it is a concern for Wachari Enterprises, because we're establishing hubs and we are pushing for the unity of Garinagu, and we're looking at Garinagu getting back to the land and using the land for those who are not currently using it, and to expand the opportunities of use for those who continue to use it, because essentially we never did stop using our lands. That's a fact. In every single community, we continue to use our lands. But maybe the intensity, the quantity, the volume might have decreased. And there are many factors that contributed to that, which Baba Roy had touched in those very informative discussions that he had with us about our use of land and things that impacted our use of land. But if we are going to get Garinagu to build this nation based on what is our foundation as a people, the use of land, we have to have land to do that. And so I'm very interested, and I'm sure our viewers would be very interested in learning from us, how exactly are we going to ensure that Garinagu have land to use? Since Wachari is pushing for Garinagu to use land, how do we make sure that we have land to use? And so I want to invite Dr. Arzu to first speak on that, and then we will continue with you, Marley. Quickly and welcome.
Well, first of all, let us not lose the land that we already have. So that's the simple solution, right? There are more of us, so of course we need more land because we're growing, and not just as a people, but we're also growing crops and industries and agriculture. So of course we need more land in that sense. But we need to first keep the land that we already have, the land that our ancestors died for, the land that all of us who were forced to abandon our home back in the 50s and 60s for the sake of economic development, right? We all had to leave and go stateside or go somewhere else to earn an income. So that land that all of us have suffered for and paid for in some kind of way, to keep the land that we have. So that's the first level of consciousness that I want to bring to the table. And in keeping the land, not just to keep it, to hold it, I think about a gatekeeper, right? A gatekeeper doesn't keep the gate, right? He doesn't take the gate home. He just makes sure that what comes in and out of the gate is wholesome. So keeping the land is not just taking the land and running off with it or selling it and doing what you want with it, but to make sure that that relationship remains wholesome. And that's the perspective from which Wachari comes from, is how do we keep the land with that level of respect, that level of productivity, and that level of wholesomeness, so that it continues to be part of our survival. So that's my first answer for that, and I'll let someone else speak.
Thank you.
I can speak a little bit more, add a little bit more to that. Yes, the land is a part of Garifuna Dual, and we are Garinago. We use land every day, right? And the lands that are available currently in our hands that we can reach to, let's make use of it. And the people who have that land and are confident that they can start farming or do some type of work on that land in regards to agriculture, join Wachari, join Wagia Foundation, and we will show you how to do exactly what we want you to do with that land. So land is everything for Garinogo. There is no separation from the land. That's the reason why we are emphasizing on don't sell your land. Don't give it away. We have use for your land. If you don't know how to use it, let us show you how to use it. So land is a part of Garifuna Dual.
That education part that Marley's touching on, and I believe one of the main things we're going to share today is the importance of that education that he's talking about. Yes, learning how to use the land, how to generate revenue with it, but also what our rights are, what we're entitled to. We have seriously been duped. We've been misinformed. We've been lied to. A whole lot of misinformation has come through all of our communities, not just Belize, but where we are in the different countries. We have all been misinformed in some kind of way, but we found our way, right? We found our way. Now it's getting the right information that we need to exert our rights and to ensure that we will have land, that we have a footing that isn't as uncertain, that isn't so uncertain. So the educational part, what are our rights? Where do we stand to ensure the land that we do have? That's the thing.
And,
So,
but
when it comes to that education, who's providing that education? I know we've made a big start. I mean, like I said, that discussion with Baba Roy was it was pivotal, because what he shared with us was the historical context. He really gave significant insight about Garifuna land use, because there have been a lot of lies that have been told, a lot of misconceptions. And so people were under the impression that, well, we've stopped using our lands, which of course is not true.
Right.
And even he had emphasized in his sharing that even if we left our communities, it did not mean never returning, and it did not necessarily mean complete abandonment. Because oftentimes members of families would leave, but not the entire family. And so there would always be someone or somebody's left behind who would still remain and continue to work the land, right? And there were people that kept going and coming as well, which was a different practice he highlighted from what the Mayas tended to do. Once they left a community, that was it, and they did not go back. But our practice has never been that of just leaving and never returning. There was always that connection, and that still remains the case now. So I see a thrust, a push for us to get, for example, we had spoken in one of these lives about the Lisurians, those who are in the diaspora, making sure that they maintain their titles and whatever to their lands, and that then they started to pay attention to those lands and put those to use. Because even if you're not here, you could always have people using the land in the community. You could make the land accessible to other family members or other members of the community. And so I heard that encouragement in a previous live for people in the diaspora to make sure that they have title control over their lands, and that then they could join, for example, Wachari, and ensure that the communities would have access to those lands. So, I mean, how is that effort going at this time?
Well, interesting. You mentioned the Lucerne and education that kind of go together, because we have two Lucerne with us here today. We have Joseph Guerrero and Deborah De Castro. And in their case, organizations have been formed in Lucerne, in the United States, pushing the same causes that we're pushing here. But where we have failed is in the holding hands across the borders, so that we can benefit from their influence and our influence here. We're at the point now where we have to come together and pool our resources so that we can take a stand in this land claim, because we're all entitled to it. We're all Garinago, it is all our land. And then you also mentioned the Maya. We're indigenous people just like the Maya. So whatever rights, privileges, and restitutions were granted to them, we are also entitled. What's confusing to me is that they were able to accomplish these things with us just standing by watching. Where the person who has schooled me and kind of straightened me out as to what really happened way back when was in taking the class from Joseph Guerrero. And I know Marley took that class as well. A few people did, on Garifuna land rights. I don't know if it was specific Garifuna land rights, but it was land rights. And I learned so much. I understood a little bit more why we are in the position that we're in. And I wanted him to personally share some of his insight on where we stand as an indigenous people, and what our chances are of moving forward, like what type of action that we could take, but more importantly, where we stand presently. And this way people can make up their own minds.
Yes. So then I would like to invite Mr. Guerrero to share a bit of.
Just before Mr. Guerrero come in,
Yes.
I want to throw something in here.
Yes.
Yes, we did do a land right course with Joseph Guerrero, but extra class was given to those who were willing to take extra class. Like the entire indigenous topic was shared with me from Joseph Guerrero, and details of certain articles that's in the ILO 169 to better understand what is out there for us to use, what kind of instruments are out there available for us to stand behind. And these subjects are not rocket science to understand, because then you can get in a small portion, just a mouthful for you to swallow, and then you understand the rest by doing your own research afterwards, because you cannot just sit down and take in whatever people are giving you. You need to do extra work to really understand what you are dealing with. So I would like that same type of education, that information sharing, to be available all across the board in our Garifuna community, to every Garifuna. So that is very, very vital moving forward from here.
I agree with you totally, because many Garinagu, they're walking around, they're living their lives day to day, and they are not cognizant, like many other rights, like many other rights. And this is one of the weaknesses of our education system, because the average Belizean doesn't know what their rights are. Just their basic and fundamental rights, they're not aware of because they're not educated about it. I know that a lot of civil society organizations have been doing a pretty good job of educating, but it's still limited. Now, if we had that as a part of our education system, then it would mean that every person would learn it from they were in primary school into high school into junior college. It wouldn't just be introduced in certain courses if you take a particular stream at high school or junior college before you would even be introduced to the whole concept of rights. If that was integral to our education system, then we would know these things and would not need short courses. And so that's something to aspire to in terms of influencing our education system, or even as we establish our own schools, because we do have that option, that we ensure that one of the things that is included in our own schools, or whatever we establish as our education system, as a Garifuna nation, we're building a nation, then we would ensure that our rights in the spaces that we occupy are regarded and that we know them, because you can't fight for rights that you don't know exist. And that is how people's rights continue to be trampled on, because they are not aware of what those rights are. So I support definitely the idea, the notion, the assertion that we should be educated about our rights. And where the current state structure is lacking in that, then we have to do it for ourselves, for sure. And we have a medium like this where that can happen. And so I'm glad that Brother Joseph is with us tonight, because it would be good to get some of what he had shared in the class that he did, for the benefit of our audience. What are some of the rights that we have as a people, as Garinago? What are the rights that we have, that especially as it relates to our lands? Brother Joseph, good night and welcome to Wachari Nation Building Monday Live.
Welcome.
Good night. Hi. Thank
Welcome,
you. And,
Joe.
thank you all very much. And I am so honored to be in company of such wonderful panelists. The people of the Garifuna Nation, the members, have been watching your show diligently week after week, because we hold you, Ifashina Efunyemi, in very high regard, and the job that you're doing on the show, and Dr. Arzu in what she's doing with her foundation. You guys are I think, a very good complement to the work that Garifuna Nation is doing. Okay, so with that, I'd like to say that the state of Garifuna in Belize currently is very grim. Garifuna in Belize as a nation, if we don't get it right soon, may actually cease to exist. Why? Because we, number one, from the beginning, and Roy went over the history quite well. I don't think anyone has been more brilliant than him regarding our history, settlement, land use. I am still in awe of what he shared. So that part, it's already established that Garifuna are pre-colonial settlers to what is now Belize. One of the biggest misconceptions that we have been taught in history is that the pre-colonial settlement of Belize of Garifuna was in Belize, and that's not true. Garifuna never went to Belize, but rather Belize came to Garifuna. That's exactly what I said. Belize came to Garifuna. Let's look at that claim a little closer. What makes people indigenous according to the international law in the ILO 169, Convention 169? It states very clearly, and we went over this in Garifuna Nation about a week ago, where we went over the definition. And the definition clearly states, and I'm saying it in short, not in the technical terms, that for you to be indigenous, you should be living in an area, a territory, before, listen to this, before that area was incorporated by some colonial power in their borders. Okay, did we get that, guys? Indigenous means you lived there before any colonial power came and asserted authority and put your territory within their borders. Okay? So, Garinago settled beyond the Sabun circa 1799, which is contained in the Suno report, and I believe she got that from Nancy Gonzalez's book, Garifuna and Ethnogenesis or something in Nancy Gonzalez's book, where she used the date 1799. Garifuna were known to be in what is today southern Belize. Now, if that was Belize, here's my question to you. If it was a part of Belize in 1799, why did we need to sign a border treaty with Guatemala in what was it, 1859, 17, what was it?
Yes,
1859.
1859.
Okay. Which is almost 100 years after our settlement. Why? I remember, I mean, they teach in Belize that Garifuna came to Belize. Okay, so if that's true in 1799, how do you explain the signing of the border treaty in 1859? And prior to the signing, there were negotiations. What are you negotiating if you own it? Second point, when we celebrate the 10th of September in Belize, it was the Battle of St. George's Key, where they won the territory by force of arms. This is something I get from Percy Lewis's teaching. Okay, so again, the same question. If it was won from Rio Hondo to Sarstoon in 1798 by a force of arms, why are you then signing a border treaty with Guatemala? Logically, this is senseless. You already won it, you claim. But when we take a closer look at history, at the time of the Battle of St. George's Key, the settlement only ran from Rio Hondo to Sabun. That was it. From Sabun to Sarstoon, the British considered terra nullius. And this, as far as we all know, the papal bull gave Spain that area. And if the British won it in 1798, why did they ask Spain for permission to log beyond the Sabun?
Right.
That makes no sense. So the history we've been taught of our settlement that we came to Belize needs to be looked at and corrected, in my opinion.
Yes,
Now,
I just want to reiterate that point because, and Baba Roy did speak to that, because indeed, when we look at the various treaties that brought us to where we are now as a nation called Belize, it was in 1786 that the British signed a Convention of London, which essentially just extended their boundaries for cutting logwood and also granting them permission to cut mahogany to as far as the Sibun River. So the jurisdiction for Sibun to Sarstoon indeed was Spain in accordance to that papal bull, yes, 1493, and then the Treaty of Tordesillas in 1496. So yes, and we understand, we know, and our people need to understand that as a people, we had been navigating these places long before they came into existence. But when Europeans were signing their treaties and making agreements and all of that, they had no regard whatsoever for natives, for First Peoples. They did not respect us in any way, did not acknowledge our existence, except to say, well, we have these quote unquote wild Indians running around the place. Or we met these we met these people here. Right? This is how they spoke of us, like we're savages and we're uncivilized and we're all these things, even though they met us and clearly we did not fall out of the sky. So how did we get to Urume? You understand? Well, clearly we knew the earth was round. We knew to navigate the seas, and that's how we were able to discover other lands. And we did discover other lands. They were lost and chanced upon our lands and met us here, already occupying these islands of the Caribbean and these mainland territories from North America to South America, right? So what you're talking about is key, and not enough of us know history. That's why we can't stop talking about history, because if we know it and understand it from our own perspective, from the standpoint or viewpoint of we, the indigenous people, then we would see where a lot of these misconceptions arise, right? Because
right, Aoife.
They even talk about Belize as an empty land.
Not to cut you off, but what is, whenever we're doing the course with Joe about the indigenous rights and the Garifuna land right, all this history is broken down to you that leads to why you are indigenous to Belize and why you have certain special rights. It's because of this narrative of the history that Joe is giving us. So it makes it easier to understand that, oh, this is why we are indigenous, because the history says we were here before the colonizers came. We were here before the how they call them, slave masters came
so
and
if you were
tried to
here
steal
before
part
them,
may I ask a question?
I
want to ask a question because I love what you're saying, Joseph Guerrero. Is the treatment of our people in the sense where we were denied our education about ourselves and our own history, is that not in itself a violation of our rights? Yes, that to have been forced through an educational system that omitted our origin, our story of origin, our existence. Is
and
that
it's a
not
big part? It is. It's a big part of the reason why today we continue to pay the government for land that we own. Continuing along that line, now if we are settled, and all the Garifuna villages were settled at that point in 1859.
So definitely. Now, wait, let me just I put a link in the I put a link because when you were talking about the definition of indigenous, right? So just for the benefit of our viewers, there's a fact sheet provided by the United Nations Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues. And in that fact sheet, some of the things that you just mentioned are laid out there, where it points out that the UN system has not adopted a specific definition to indigenous, but there are characteristic traits, or there are specific factors that they look at, and they look at our self-identification first and foremost as indigenous peoples, at both individual and by the community, our historical continuity, like you mentioned, with pre-colonial and pre-settler societies. So establishing that we had communities established before the arrival of any colonial structure, the strong link to territories and surrounding natural resources, distinct social, economic, and political systems,
In other words, the identity.
language,
That's
culture,
our
and
identity.
beliefs.
Yes.
Our identity. Yes,
Right?
it's connected to the
And
land.
we have all of these things. We
Exactly.
at Garinago have all of these things.
We fit all of the criteria.
Let Joe speak, y'all. Let him speak. He came all this way. Let him
Right.
speak.
I just
Go ahead,
wanted
Joe.
to so that our audience would be aware of the link, so they could get more information to what he just shared.
Very
Thank
good.
you.
Go ahead.
So-
Go ahead, brother
I feel so
Okay,
smart
so
sitting
now-
here.
It is now established that we were there. Now, let's look at this other thing now. If you're there, you're living on the land, you own the land. You own the land because there's no territory, no border around your land. The Spaniards, by 1821, they had gone because of the Civil War, and then it became the Republic of Guatemala. And then some 3-4 years later, around 1825, 26, the republics broke away from Guatemala and became independent nations. Now, this is a little trick that everybody always misses. Each time those places break off, then you're newly colonized. So you were there before them anyway. So in the case of Honduras, where we went prior to 1821, if we were indigenous at that time or not, I don't know. It's kind of gray for me. But when it became its own republic, since we were there before the republic, now we're indigenous there. Okay? And in Belize, it's obvious we were there prior to colonization. So now that we've established we are indigenous, we have land. Because if you are living on a land and England comes and says, well, we own all this territory now, it's in our border rather. Okay, we were there before your border came. Now you're saying this land belongs to you and I have to pay you for it? This land that is connected now to my identity, I have to pay you for it? Are you out of your mind? However, I think Garinago, as a war-weary people at that time, and remember, we were diplomats. We had treaties with France and with the British from Urume. So, and we were the only ones in this area that did. So now they are trying to tell us we have to pay them for this land that we were on before you came to me. Now, unfortunately, that logic has sunken in to our society as Garinago. The land is ours. If it's yours, you do not pay for it. You do not even pay taxes on it to the government of Belize. You were there before the government of Belize existed. So a big miscommunication in Garifuna society in Belize is that you need to get a title from the government. What does that mean to indigenous people? It means basically you are undoing yourself while you're trying to preserve yourself. So we think that getting title means we own the land now and they can't do this. But guess what? It's your territory, but you are now voluntarily giving your territory to the government to sell to you by acknowledging this title business. Now you are telling the government, okay, this land, I was here before you, but you own it and then I'll buy it from you. But here's the twist. The twist that is really dangerous to us. The government cannot discriminate if you are giving them crown lands. That means they can sell it to the highest bidder, even if it's not a Garifuna. There is no obligation by the government to sell its crown land to Garinago. You can't go to the government and say, I want title I am Garifuna, so I am entitled to a title here in this territory. No, the government has no business doing that at all. Remember, we have the legal precedent. Let's look at Judge Conte's decision. Don't listen to what I say, but let's demonstrate through Judge Conte's orders, okay, in the Maya land rights case. And it applies to Garifuna. He said that the government must cease and desist from using Maya lands in the lands registry. What does that mean? No title. You cannot have title.
So how do we
So
fix this, Joe? You're gonna give us some kind of
Yeah, get some
idea,
answers here.
because story is getting really sad. You're gonna give us some resolution
Yeah,
ideas,
we
right?
want some answers there, Joe.
well, I can tell you how I believe we should proceed. Number
Okay.
one, stop paying the government for land that you own. Stop it. And in fact, what has the government done through the years to perpetuate this illegal land tenure system of title in indigenous lands? They threaten you that if you don't vacate this land, they're going to take you to court, you'll be convicted, you'll be thrown off and possibly thrown into jail for occupying your own land. So it's not like they didn't scare us into conforming to their system, coercion, with the punishment if you don't get a title.
But how do you keep yourself from being penalized? Because clearly there is a legal backative for them taking such actions. You have to pay taxes, and if you don't pay taxes, then you get penalized for not paying your taxes. So how would we as Garinagu now get to where we can stop the government from doing that?
Okay, that is the government land tenure system that was forced upon us. So what you would have to do is stop paying for land that you own, occupy the land. When you get your paper, like Dr. Arzu got his paper, that's what you want. Now you have to go to court. And that's where help has to come in, because that is how the Garifuna land rights case has to begin, with that. With the government trying to get you off your land and sell your land, but what's worse, the government will get the profit from selling your land. That's what they did with the jetty. The government trying to get you off your land and sell your land. So the way that we start, we either have to go, I know Garifuna Nation has already given the government notice, legal notice of our concern. We wrote to the government about our concern that they are selling us our own land and violating our land rights. That's what you have to do. That was the very first time that I know of that any legal measure was taken for Garifuna land rights in Belize. It's a process. You have to give the government a chance to correct it. And if they don't, then you have to go have it adjudicated, which is where we have no choice but to go.
So what was the government, because then you just mentioned an important step there, that the government needed to be given an opportunity to correct the situation. So has that happened?
No, because we are in our infancy, crawling with land rights. Just writing the letter, however, is the first step. I was after another organization in Belize for years to write the government of such concern so that they can be legally notified that they're violating our rights. It wasn't, that was not performed. So when the Garifuna Nation had started this land minister office, that had to be my job. I have to inform them that they were violating the rights of the Garinagu by charging them for land that they own. And they have acknowledged receiving that letter. So now we have taken the first step. We will continue to try to reach out to the government to discuss the ceasing of the violations. Now, having them make up for what they have done does not mean they're going to give us land somewhere else, because this done gone. Why? You have to consider what you are doing. If you are going to let the government get away with taking our villages and saying, well, the other people have rights. Well, guess what? So do I. I had rights before any of them. And we are a Garifuna village. What makes us Garifuna is our settlement and use of this area, as Roy so brilliantly showed us. When you start to give away title in those places from the government, then it's up for competition. That means you can't afford it anymore, and it's your land. That's why the title system, or the government's land tenure system, should not be encouraged. In fact, again, not me, but that's not my idea. Judge Contest said that the Maya customary land tenure system is what will be used in the Maya territory, not the government. In fact, they told the government cease and desist from using it in their land registry system. Land registry system, meaning the title system.
So let me stick a pin there.
Mm-hmm.
In the case of Garinago, historically, we, yes, have occupied lands around our communities, large tracts of lands around our communities, but because of the land tenure system that was in place,
Mm-hmm.
we got title to those lands. So
right.
Are you now saying, because that would be one of the differences that we have in comparison to Mayas, is that we have had lease and titles to our lands that we were using in our communities. Now, are you suggesting now a switch to communal land ownership as opposed to private land ownership?
What I am suggesting is that we look at what you just said slowly. Let's go slow down there. When we were accosted by the British, they brought that land tenure system to us. And they told us if we don't get title, somebody else can get the title. That's coercion. So we were coerced into accepting that system. Because we were coerced, not of our own will, because we were afraid of the consequences. We would worry about our families, about our children, and we think that we have to use this land tenure system, which is not Baba Roy. He's the one who was telling us what our land tenure system was. Hey, bro, I just come here, I need a place to farm. Where I can farm? That's our land tenure system. That's it. So now we were coerced by the British, and if you guys note, the British didn't go and force the Maya in their communities to get this, have to use the same land tenure system. This is where Alex Goff questions if it was something that had to do with race. These are Black people, they can't be indigenous, they're slaves. That's how the British are used to seeing us. So what we would have to do is to challenge the land tenure system in a court of law, because the government has our villages as crown lands.
Right.
How can that be?
Yeah.
When we were here before your crown? Like Chatoué said, when he was told about England, the King of England, he said, Quel roi, which means what king? What are you talking about? I have no king. But they came and they brought the system and forced it on us through threatening, subtle threatening of consequences if we don't buy our land from them, our land that we had settled. They zeroed in right on the Garifuna, because the Maya were there too. But they zeroed in on the Garifuna to have them pay.
There's a question on the page. What if we stop paying land taxes? Then what? And who would pay our legal fees then for going to court?
What would be brilliant is if everyone, every Garifuna, in every Garifuna villages, stop paying taxes and we bring a class action against the government. That would be the best move that we could possibly make.
That would be the correct move. I would agree. And if we had any legal, anybody who knew anything about legal anything, they would agree too.
That's where we need to go.
Yeah.
That's exactly where we need to go. Have a program where we teach everybody, okay, on this date, everybody stop paying taxes. And then we start to the court system right there. That's an easy way to start it.
But why can't we just file a lawsuit?
You can, but you have to go through the process like we're going through it step by step by step. The way that we were just discussing, I think would have more immediate effect because it would have to be adjudicated quicker. But this way, we have to take certain steps until we get to court, the way that Garifuna Nation is doing it. But if we can get individuals from every Garifuna village who are concerned about our communal lands to participate and sign on to the case, then I think we would get faster results. Keeping in mind that, remember the Maya land rights case was first filed by the Maya Leaders Alliance. And it was thrown out because they didn't have standing to file the case. So what did they have to do? They had to get individuals from the villages whose rights were actually being violated. You see, MLA, as with, say, the Garifuna Nation, or even with the National Garifuna Council, they can't file a case. You would have to get individuals to file. Yes, you as the organization would assist, do everything for the individuals. And then you sign on as an interested party. That's where we failed in the Maya land rights case, to sign on as an interested party.
Now, I know that there have been specific cases where Garifuna people have lost their lands, or their lands were infringed upon, or other people end up occupying their lands and so on. Now, those are separate individual cases. So what you're talking about, is it going to then require, I'm just thinking about what you're suggesting here, that people that have had their individual cases in various communities, I know of instances in St. Bite, for example, we're looking at Hopkins, Dangriga,
PG too. Yep.
Georgetown, Punta Gorda. There's been a lot of land grabbing.
Yep.
Around Garifuna communities. Every single one, there's been a whole lot of land grabbing. And even like in the case of both St. Bite and Hopkins, gentrification, I would think you're familiar with that term, where once you have white people, particularly upper class people, going into communities, then spiking essentially the value of lands, making it difficult, almost impossible for locals to then afford to keep their lands, because now taxes become even higher, right? So it's all these problems. These are problems happening in all the communities. I'm hearing you in relation to Garifuna Nation's effort. Is Garifuna Nation, that entity, aware of those various cases of infringements and a lot of violations of people's rights? This is, of course, there was eventually a time in which Garinagu were able to have lands, own lands. Initially, they were not. They were granted reserves, so were the Mayas. But then eventually there was the opportunity to have titles. And so there are many Garifuna lands, or lands occupied by Garinagu, that were titled property. So how do we move forward now, collectively asserting our collective rights in our communities? Because you're also talking about individuals who have titles to lands. How do we fix that? Are you there, Brother Joseph?
Oh, he's muted.
Well, all right.
Sorry about that, guys. Okay. All of these issues that you have described with the individuals are exactly those. They're individual situations. Why? Because they chose that to go under the 10 land tenure system, and those are the main weaknesses in the land tenure system of the government of Belize, where the wealthy will always be able to come and come from behind you and give some money to someone and end up owning your land. That's the government land tenure system. That's what a lot of people are pushing for. And that's what's going to happen. We
Do you,
never ever approach this as indigenous people. Even now, many people are trying to deny our indigenous status and still make an argument for these very unfair land tenure system where you're going to have to buy your land from the government. And that's if you are not outbid by someone who has more money than you.
so the
So
strategy is to the land tenure system is the bad guy here. And so people
yes,
who have suffered the violations or infractions that Aoife was just talking about as a result of or under the land tenure system are the victims with entitlement to sue.
yes.
And
So
then we can join, we can support them as interested parties.
yeah, but they would have to, if they sue as I was here first, this is my lease. No, 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 no. That's not
Right.
indigenous rights. Indigenous rights have nothing to do with the land tenure system that the government has. Remember, Judge Conte has already established that we have a right to our own land tenure system. That doesn't mean, that means no more government titles. No, we have our own lands office in every territory, and we deal with our people ourselves with our own land title, not the government.
Isn't that what the
Okay,
Maya are
Joe,
doing? They're managing
Joe,
their own land.
I
that's
want,
exactly what they're doing.
Yeah.
Joe, I wanna break it down for a youth like myself, what you just said, and
Please.
what Ifa question was. Ifa was asking, what about the people who have lost their land because of not paying taxes, or someone just went behind the scenes under the table, paid someone, and they acquired the land.
Mhm.
Um, that is the government land tenure system, right?
Correct.
If you go to court and claim that, oh, you lost your land because someone paid someone under the table, that you're going through the government land tenure system, and that is not indigenous. That is not
No,
customary
it's
to
not.
us, right? So you cannot go
Mm.
and claim indigenous right using the government land tenure system. It won't work out for you. That's a losing battle for
It
you.
is.
If
And
you
you've
have a
seen through
piece
the years. Yeah.
Yeah, if you have a piece of property that's handed down to you from generation to generation, now you can go and claim that this is our land, this is my family land, this is indigenously owned, this is ours, and it has been violated by someone illegally acquiring it. Now you are talking indigenous rights and how to claim your
Brilliantly
land
said.
indigenously.
But I want to broaden that even more, Marley. It's not just that individual plot. The entire territory,
Right.
Dr. Arzu, the entire territory, if I should now, and guess, the whole territory is ours. So when people believe that, oh, well, the government, they don't title this out, blah, 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 and so on and so forth. Okay, fine. But again, you cannot just say that our rights are is a result of common sense. So you think we are get that back? You out of your mind. Okay. Let's look at again. Look at the facts. Look at Judge Arana, what she did recently in Halakha. What did she do? Land that the government took from Maya how long ago? 10, 12 years ago? She gave it back to them. Now, let's go back 10 years. If we can get back our lands from 10 years ago when they had the CCJ, and you can go from when the Maya actually filed. As soon as they filed, the government had a responsibility to stop giving out lands in those areas until it was resolved. But I think we can go back even further to 1989 when the ILO 169 was ratified. the government was responsible for the principles of the ILO from 1989. Anything that did against that in this time, I think can be challenged. Of course, that's up to far superior legal minds to advise us. But from what I've been advised, that's a possibility. Now, if Ashina it was asking, how do we then go about this? Okay, this is where we have to get those individuals who have gone to the government and have gotten no result to now come back and do it different. This land is indigenous land, pursuant to the Maya land rights case principles. The Maya land rights case principles holds that we have customary rights. And this is a part of those customary lands. So I am an owner of this land, not the government. And the land tenure system is wrong and it's illegal if you don't have this government land tenure system in the Maya villages, you can't have it in the Garifuna villages because we're indigenous. We're here before the government. And this is a part of our territory. That's the argument that we have to make. We don't just say, if you think that they're going to give us back our lands, you crazy. No, no, no. You let the judge call me crazy, not you. I want the judge to call me crazy. Put it in front of the judge, because I think I'll have far better results with a learned judge than my own common sense. You see? And that's where Garifuna are making mistakes by prejudging themselves what the result will be. No, 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 no. You take
Giving
your
up
case
before
to the
they
judge.
even start. Giving
Yeah,
up before they
exactly.
even start.
Exactly.
So
you have to take it in front of a judge.
We're down to the last few minutes. So I want to establish something here. You're talking about Garinago taking that bold step that organizations are not able to go take a matter to court necessarily. It's individuals that need to take a matter to court. How do we now get Garinago on board? How do we get their feedback? How do we get their participation, their involvement? Because it's imperative to hear from our people what their thoughts are and what their position is and what they would like to see happen. Has that been done? I personally have never been asked what I think should happen as a Garifuna woman. About our asserting our rights as Garinago. I have not been consulted in that regard if I think that we should go. I'm speaking just as an ordinary Garifuna woman in a Garifuna community. I have not seen that level of consultation happen. So is that happening anywhere by anyone to get feedback from Garinago about where we should be going with this matter?
That to me,
Joe, before getting there, there's a survey going on right now online in regards to Garifuna communal land, indigenous land rights. And the questions in the survey is asking things like, are you knowledgeable about communal land rights? The results of this survey that we are doing currently will be used to guide us on how we will interact with our people moving forward, because the data that we are collecting will be just straight across the board, tell us what our people need to know so that they can make an informed decision whether or not they want to be involved in going to the court, or they want to be involved in acquiring the knowledge needed. So the survey will speak to us, and that will help us reach out to our people. I just want to throw that in there.
Okay, thank you. Now, of course, the individual complainers would not be left alone. You know, it's not like they have to go first and file, and then the organization sign on as an interested party. Usually, as in the Maya land rights case, the MLA was involved in every step with the individuals, going to court and guiding them every step of the way, and making sure that the case gets in front of a judge, and that yes, they do schedule it for court. And once they do, then the groups can then sign on as interested parties, and then actually become the leaders in terms of publicity and speaking with the public after court dates, etc., and organizing the lawyers to help those individuals. Okay, that's how it should usually run. So we feel like the time is right. We feel like there are plenty of cases out there. I know about many cases that we have some potential that we can take to court. And Garifuna Nation has already announced that, yes, we have some counsel that we are in talks with, and they have agreed to take our case. They have agreed. So now it's just a matter of some procedures, and then we can begin to look at the cases that are before us that we can use for the test case. We're at that point, yes.
Okay, so there are a few things happening simultaneously, and I am hopeful that our people are paying attention and that they do get engaged, especially persons that have already suffered as a result, that have already experienced losses. There are lots of matters right now in the pipeline. People are going through their own challenges in relation to land, having made payments for clarification of documents and all of that, and getting no result whatsoever. People have sold off lands and, you know, even not received the payments that they were supposed to get for those lands, then those lands being resold. I mean, there are many, some very horrific stories, as a matter of fact, of our people's experiences. I do hope that we could continue, because you see how quickly an hour always passes us by. But I definitely would like for us to continue this particular discussion next week, because maybe by then too, we will hear some more persons talking about their own experiences in the various Garifuna communities as it regards our rights. And it is certainly important for people to understand that we are, you know, the whole business of indigeneity, and how we, even though it might appear that the ruling on the Maya land and their case is just beneficial to them, it's actually also useful to us because we are indigenous peoples. And so I would like for us to continue with that discussion in next week's live. I want to thank each and every one of you for your awesome insight that you've brought to this discussion tonight. We have had several viewers and comments talking and appreciating the wealth of information that has been shared here. And we definitely want to continue in that same vein next Monday live. And so next week, Monday, is going to be Emancipation Day. That's when it's going to be actually officially celebrated. But and it's a holiday here. It's the first time it's going to be a holiday here. But I still believe that this topic is key and important for us to talk about, especially in the spirit of emancipation. You know, so I would like for us to continue next Monday at the same time. Yes, Marley.
Yeah, I want to speak to the survey. We're doing a Garifuna land rights survey. It's mostly on Facebook. You can either get it on Wachari Nation Builders page, Facebook page. I also messaging people directly. It's also on my Facebook page. If you come across a survey, please, Garina, go take the survey, do the survey, participate. We want to know exactly where your mind is when it comes to land rights. Like I said earlier, the results of the survey will guide us on how to educate our people to get them more informed and knowledgeable about their rights, especially when it comes to land rights in this case. So do the survey, share the survey, get everyone in their family to do the survey. We need this data and we need it quickly.
Yes, I see. I posted the link also. I know it's pinned on Wagia Foundation's Facebook page, but I've also, the link is also there in the chat for this particular live. And so people can access it there as well. So yes, let's get the word. Data is important. We definitely need data. We can't just be operating from anecdotal and, you know, opinions
Right.
and so on. We need to establish some facts. So people need to say this is what they think. And I think that would definitely, I definitely applaud Wachari for taking that initiative of actually gathering this information from Garinagu. And that data, I'm looking forward to the findings being shared on one of these Monday Lives.
It
So
will. It
we'll
will.
continue this discussion next week for certain. Our time is now expired and we're a little bit over time. It's always great conversation for Wachari Nation Building Monday Live, right? So
Ipa, I would like to interview more people who think they have a case against the government. So please refer them to me if that's okay.
yes,
we would love to
definitely.
support, like, we would definitely love to support like that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sarah May, we going on.
Thank
Oh,
you. Thank you, Eva. Thank you, Marley. What a team. Thank you so much, Joseph Guerrero. Thank you
It's
very
been a
much.
pleasure being here with you guys. My honor.
Look forward to seeing
okay.
you again. Ayo.
Ayo, ayo.